Um, just look to make sure I'm not missing this correctly. Okay, perfect. Just our initial response and some of what we're up against. Let me just take a look at one thing here. I was kind of just, oh, no, that's going to take us. All right, perfect. Our initial response. We get the phone call, my house is flooded. What do we do? Run away. I've talked a little bit about that on the phone call with contracts. We've already had this conversation. The first thing I need to do after my safety inspection is find out how far the water went. And it does move this three-dimensional path through the structure. It's going to move laterally. It's going to move, they call it migrating sideways. It's going to, wet carpet. It's going to hit particle board and drywall, and it's going to soak or wick up, called capillary action. It's going to work its way through materials or find gaps or holes or penetrations, and it's going to drop down. It's going all over the place. There's another point I'll make on that a little bit later on, but I've got to look everywhere, and it will go places like, how in the world did that get there? And so we have to look where it's obvious, but also where it's not necessarily obvious. There's three types of damage that you want to be aware of. Pre-existing damage, the damage was already there. Primary damage, what the water did when it hit it. And secondary damage, which I call the second wave of damage. What's going to happen if we don't get that water out of there and the water in liquid form or vapor form stays there long enough, it's going to cause additional issues or secondary damage. So our primary damage, like I said, it might be delaminated carpet, it might be dog poop on the carpet, it might be mold behind the rubber base in the bathroom or under a big potted plant in the living room. I've seen that so many times. And you'll have someone who they clean up a toilet overflow in their bathroom, not realizing the water went under the rubber base and wicked up the drywall behind the vinyl wallpaper. That's not going to dry out. I remember a hospital job we did. It's so heartbreaking to see people do the right thing and have it not work out the right way. Brand new hospital in Carson City, about 30 miles from here. And it was probably a year and a half old, and they had pretty good sized water damage, clean water coming through the floors. Well, on this gleaming new hospital, the custodial staff had so much pride, did a great job. They had these, 8 foot wide corridors with VCT, maybe a sheet vinyl, I can't remember. Nice wallpaper, rubber wallpaper, and every night their staff is wet mopping these floors, keeping them just shiny and new, looking great. They did such a good job. We get there the day of the water damage. We start pulling rubber base off, and it's moldy everywhere. They're like, "What the heck?" We take some. Well, every night they're sloshing water under the rubber base, and it's soaking up the drywall. It can't dry out. They're feeding it every night. It's like it's so unfair. They're trying so hard to do the right thing, and it just didn't work out that way. So pre-existing damage could be damage to the structure. It could be, damage to the furniture or materials that we don't want to get blamed for. We talked about that with the 3D cameras or just a regular camera. Delamination of carpet. And delamination is a separation of layers. So like I've got this little table here that has a white melamine finish on it, and it's glued. If that glue broke, it would start to delaminate. Carpet is actually made up of the face yarn structure, and the backing on it is actually two different backings. I have what's called the primary backing, which is what holds the face yarn together, and the secondary backing adheres to that. And the term that you don't need to worry about this, it's called dimensional stability, the strength to stretch across the room up on the tack strip. Well, if that starts to come apart, it's lost its structural integrity. You're going to lose that carpet. Now, this can happen for a lot of reasons we'll talk about later on. Water damage is one of them. Pet urine is another. Wear patterns are another. There's a lot of things that can cause carpet delamination when you're in there. And I don't want to get blamed for stuff. And one thing I've seen happen a lot over the years is the job's all done, and the people say, "Hey, you scratched that. You need to replace that." Well, I don't think we did. You'll have a situation where someone's got granite countertops in their kitchen, beautiful granite dark granite countertops in their kitchen, and there's water damage in the ceiling. And the cabinets are fine. Don't even have to take the countertops out. Take the drywall out, take the insulation out, get it all dry, put in new drywall, and the light fixture was damaged. So you put in a brand new light fixture. Well, the new light fixture hangs down a little bit lower and has brighter LED lights. Well, there was some scratches in that granite that you never saw before, but with the new lighting, now you can see them. So are the scratches new? No. Are they new to the homeowner? Yes, they are. And they go, "Oh, my counter's all scratched up." And I remember that when you guys were here, you put some tools on my countertop. Yeah, but we put down some cardboard and plastic. We were really careful. Well, It's pretty hard to try and say it wasn't your fault. So one thing I tell my clients is never, ever, ever put your stuff on their stuff. You don't set your meter on their bedspread. You don't put your equipment on their countertop. You don't put tools on. You don't, and it's like, well, we put down plastic. So I also have four boys. My wife and I have four boys and a girl. And when my kids were small, I hated it when they fought because who am I going to cheer for, And I remember times when one of my boys would run in and scream, he hit me as hard as he could. And what's the defense for that? Oh, that wasn't as hard as I can. You want to see as hard as I can? Come here, you punk. But I remember my boys saying, I didn't hit him that hard. I'm like, let me give you a better defense. Wouldn't a better defense than trying to explain to me how hard you didn't or hit him? If you could just honestly say, I didn't hit him, doesn't that seem like that would be a better way to get out of this problem you're into right now? I don't want to say we were careful when we put our stuff on your stuff. I just am not going to do it at all because I don't want to be buying a new countertop, a new tile floor. And we do that. Hey, Mr. and Mrs. Jones, we're going to be bringing some stuff in out of our truck. We're going to be rolling in some portable extractors, some dehumidifiers, some large air filtration devices. And we just noticed your entry's got a couple of chip tiles and some cracks in the ground. Oh, yeah, it's been that way for years. Just want to make sure you knew. Oh, my gosh, when did that happen? If the oh my gosh, when did that happen happens after you rolled your stuff across it, now they want us to buy them a new tile floor. And again, not necessarily being dishonest, they just didn't see it. They didn't pay attention to it. And so I want to be very cautious about that. Primary damage is what happens when there's water dripping out of the ceiling and the carpet's sloshy. As restorers, my job is to clean that up. That's why people call us because they see primary damage. Well, this is a mess. Better get somebody out here to clean this up. So I can't do anything to eliminate that. My job is to keep it from getting worse and start to clean the mess up. Because if that doesn't happen, it leads to secondary damage or the second wave. In my opinion, as a restorer, my job is to reduce or eliminate secondary damage. Get on that job site, extract the water, block the furniture, and start to ventilate or dehumidify so that moisture doesn't go cause additional damage somewhere. If I don't do my job correctly and I leave moisture in there, secondary damage. If I do it right, there shouldn't be. It should all be gone. So dimensional secondary could be dimensional changes. That is a knife block. That's your knife block on humidity. Ceiling blades, things are swelling and just all sorts of stuff. Water causes issues. So pre-existing damage, primary damage, and secondary damage. There's also hidden damage. Kind of goes along. We have to find, like I said, everywhere the water went, crawl spaces and attics. I remember the homeowner had dried out the bathroom drawers where the water damage started. I was thinking really well. Like, wow, these look dry. We flipped them over and the masonite was soaking wet. Well, I'm glad we didn't miss that. Metal framing, the bottom channel of metal framing is the C channel. It can hold a lot of water in there, given the opportunity, especially if there's insulation in there. Under bathtubs, especially on a concrete slab, they dig out to get the plumbing in there, and then they leave it all and put the bathtub in. I guess not the end of the world, but when it gets wet, it's pretty hard to dry that out. This is what I wanted to point out. This plumbing right here is called PEX plumbing. And one of the big benefits is that, let's say you're running plumbing in the house. Here's an upstairs bathroom with a vanity. There's a room down below it. Come on, I'm pushing the button right and everything. There's a room down below it, and then there's another bathroom downstairs with a vanity. If you're running copper, and I'm not a plumber, but if you're running copper plumbing, everything has to be at a 90-degree angle. So you run your plumbing from this one to this one right here. Here's my floor downstairs. If there's a leak upstairs, it's going to come straight down and get the floor wet. Pretty easy to find. With PEX plumbing, it's much faster because I now don't have to run it 90 degrees. I just go, bloop. Oh, come on. What are you doing there? I have no idea what I hit. Oh, that's what I hit. Okay. Ooh, don't do restart computer. I know I don't want that. Okay. So on this, I don't know what's about to happen because I got a bad sign for a second. So now I can run it at an angle like that. Well, now if it's running like that, some water is going to come straight down, but some is going to, remember, water sticks to stuff. It's going to run along that PEX plumbing until gravity gets strong enough and it's going to come off of there. So it's going to run right along this plumbing. This is the same thing where you'll see water damage ceiling from a leaky roof, but the leaky roof is 30 feet over there. It comes through, runs down the truss, and then drips on the ceiling. So you got water, a vanity, and wet carpet, and then 10 feet of dry carpet and more wet carpet under the couch. How are you going to find that? You got to chase it down and look for it. Another way it gets around is the tack strip I talked about is installed about 3/8 of an inch away from the wall. So water gets up over that, it becomes a perfect channel to run down. So I've just got to look everywhere that I can. This is a sprayed in insulation, closed cell insulation. It works great until it gets wet. Like anything else, it's non-permeable, which means if it keeps the water out, fantastic. But if the water gets behind it, you have to get it out of there in order to dry behind it. And it is horrible stuff. If you ever have to take this stuff out, I would recommend that you go spend a few hours at the plumbing supply house and a few more hours at the dockyards. You need to hang out with some plumbers and sailors because the swear words are not sufficient to get this stuff out. You're going to have to learn some new ones. It's coming out an inch at a time with a chisel, and it's just nasty. It's just horrible, horrible, horrible. So on our documentation, pre-existing, hey, we got there and this had already happened. Primary damage, the ceilings were leaking, the carpet's wet. Secondary damage, they were out of town for a couple days and this furniture is swollen up and there's some stains in the carpet. Here's some secondary damage that occurred before we got there. We stopped it at that point. So this should be a pretty easy one. Although I might get a couple answers on this. All right, nice, nice. All right, so what I'm showing is this one, damage from water or humidity over time. That's correct. That's what it is. Now, those that put damage occurs after the drying portion of the job, I get this answer a lot. And I think what you're saying is if the drying wasn't done correctly and there's still water there, that would lead to secondary damage. Because if it's dry, there won't be any secondary damage. So if that was your thought process, yes, that happens a lot. We have to look at that. But here's what I want to just point out is that if damage occurred after the drying portion of the job was not done correctly, what would be the cause of that damage? Water or humidity over time, leaving that in place. So the best answer on this from a technical aspect would be the water that's there over time. Whether it's from incomplete drying or because nobody's home, that's what's causing it. And so in this situation, you're not going to find test answers like that, but just that's the kind of the mindset I want you to be in is don't overthink the exam. Well, it could be this if I look at it that way, but if it's Thursday,